What if one simple traffic stop could end your entire American dream? Curious, you are driving home, you see flashing lights, a police officer walks up and taps your tail light, and in the next 60 seconds, everything you have worked for, your green card, your visa, your asylum case, your family's future, is suddenly at risk. But here's the question nobody is asking. Did you know that what you say and do during those first few seconds could determine whether you keep your immigration status or lose it forever? Stay right here, because what I am about to reveal has already cost thousands of immigrants everything. Serious. Welcome back to US Visa and Green Card Info. Every day on this channel, we break down the most critical immigration updates, visa news, green card information, and know your rights content to help you protect your status and your future in the United States. Today we are covering something that almost no immigration channel ever talks about, but it affects every single immigrant in America. Traffic stops. Not just the driving part, the immigration consequences part. Because for US citizens, a traffic stop is an inconvenience. For a green card holder, a visa holder, an asylum seeker, or anyone with a pending immigration case, that same traffic stop can become a life-changing event. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because the information in this video could literally save your immigration case. And if you are already subscribed, share this video with every immigrant you know who drives in this country. They need this before their next time behind the wheel. Now let me show you exactly what happens during a traffic stop, why it matters so much more for immigrants, and the precise steps that can protect your status from beginning to end. Let me start with something that most people do not understand. For a US citizen, the worst outcome of a routine traffic stop is usually a ticket, maybe a fine, maybe points on their license. Frustrating, sure, but not life-altering. But for an immigrant, the stakes are completely different. Here's why. If you are a green card holder and you get charged with certain offenses during a traffic stop, even something that seems minor like a misunderstanding that escalates, it can affect your ability to renew your green card. It can create problems during your naturalization interview. And in serious cases, it can even lead to removal proceedings. If you are on a work visa, a student visa, or any temporary status, a criminal charge from a traffic stop can result in visa revocation. That means the next time you leave the country and try to come back, you could be denied entry. If you have a pending asylum case, any negative encounter with law enforcement can be used against you in your proceedings. Immigration judges review your record carefully, and even a minor incident can raise questions about your character and credibility. And if you are undocumented, a traffic stop in certain states can lead directly to ICE involvement, detention, and removal proceedings. In some jurisdictions, local law enforcement cooperates with federal immigration authorities, meaning a simple broken tail light can set off a chain of events that ends with you in an immigration detention facility. This is the reality. The same traffic stop that a US citizen forgets about by the next morning can follow an immigrant for years, sometimes permanently. That is exactly why you need to understand what is actually happening during a traffic stop, moment by moment, so you can protect yourself at every single stage. Now let me take you inside the traffic stop itself, starting with something that seems completely insignificant but is actually very deliberate. You have probably seen it before. An officer walks up to your car and casually taps or touches your tail light on the way to your window. Most people do not even notice it. It feels routine, almost like a habit. But that tap is not random, and it is not meaningless. It serves two very specific purposes, and understanding them gives you a major advantage. The first purpose is straightforward. It is a physical marker. By touching your vehicle, the officer leaves fingerprints that connect them to that specific car at that specific time. If anything unusual happens during the stop, that physical evidence proves the officer was at your vehicle. It is a standard procedure in many departments across the country. But the second purpose is where things become critically important for you as a driver, especially as an immigrant driver. That touch can act as a subtle trigger to observe your reaction. When something unexpected happens, people react instinctively. Do you suddenly reach for something? Do you turn around quickly? Do your hands disappear from view? Do you make any sudden movement? Here is why this matters enormously for immigrants. Those instinctive reactions can be interpreted as signs of nervousness or suspicious behavior. And once that observation is documented in the officer's report, it can be used to justify expanding the stop. In legal terms, this is called reasonable suspicion, and it gives the officer grounds to ask more questions, extend the interaction, and potentially escalate the situation. For a U.S. citizen, an escalated stop might mean a longer inconvenience. For an immigrant, an escalated stop can mean additional questioning about your identity, your status, where you are from, and whether you have documentation. It can mean a call to federal authorities. It can mean the beginning of a process that threatens everything you have built in this country. And it all starts with that one small tap and your reaction to it. So what should you do? The answer is simple but powerful. When that tap happens, you do nothing. Your hands stay exactly where they are. No sudden movements. No reaching. No turning around. You remain completely still. And that stillness removes the trigger entirely. Now let me walk you through the first few seconds of a traffic stop, because this is where the majority of immigrants unknowingly create serious problems for themselves. The moment you see flashing lights behind you and pull over, your instinct kicks in. Your mind immediately thinks, let me grab my license, let me get my registration ready, let me show the officer I am cooperative. And before the officer even reaches your window, you are already reaching across the car, opening the glove compartment, digging through papers, maybe even reaching under the seat for a bag. It feels responsible. It feels like you are being helpful. But from the officer's perspective, walking up to your vehicle, all they see is movement, hands disappearing, reaching into unknown spaces, activity inside the vehicle before any contact has been made. And that single observation, driver was reaching into the glove box before I approached the vehicle, can be written into a report. Once it is documented, it becomes part of the official record of the stop. It raises the level of caution. It can justify additional scrutiny. And for an immigrant, additional scrutiny during a traffic stop can open doors that are very difficult to close. Here is what you should do instead. The moment your car comes to a complete stop, you do 4 things. 1. You turn off the engine. 2. You turn on your interior light if it is dark outside. 3. You roll your window down. 4. You place both hands clearly and visibly on the steering wheel. And then you wait. You do not move. You do not reach for anything. You do not touch your phone. You simply sit there with your hands visible and wait for the officer to come to you. When the officer arrives at your window, you say one calm, clear sentence. Good evening, officer. My hands are on the steering wheel. That is it. No extra explanation. No rushing. No scrambling for documents. Just clarity, visibility, and composure. Now, when the officer asks for your license and registration, which they will, you do not immediately reach for them. Instead, you tell the officer exactly where those items are located before you move. My license is in my wallet in my back pocket. May I reach for it? My registration is in the glove compartment. May I reach for it? These simple sentences do something incredibly powerful. They eliminate ambiguity. They prevent your movements from being misinterpreted. And they demonstrate awareness and cooperation without creating any reason for concern. For an immigrant, this approach is especially critical because it keeps the stop routine. It prevents escalation, and it reduces the chance that the interaction moves beyond a simple traffic matter into territory that could affect your immigration status. Alright, now let me take you to the phase of the traffic stop that catches more immigrants off guard than any other. And it does not feel like a trap at all. It feels like a normal conversation. After you hand over your documents, the officer might glance at them and then ask something that sounds completely casual, almost like small talk. Where are you coming from tonight? Where are you headed? Do you live around here? Where do you work? How long have you lived in this area? The tone is relaxed. The delivery is friendly. Nothing about it feels like an interrogation. But what is actually happening in that moment is information gathering. Every answer you give is being processed, evaluated, and in many cases, documented. Now here is the critical legal point that every immigrant in America needs to understand. You are not legally required to answer those questions. During a traffic stop, your legal obligation is very specific. You must provide your driver's license, your vehicle registration, and your proof of insurance. In some states, you must provide your name if asked directly. That is it. Everything beyond that is voluntary. But because those extra questions do not feel optional, most drivers answer them automatically. They try to be polite. They try to seem cooperative. And in doing so, they start volunteering information that they do not need to provide. For an immigrant, this is particularly dangerous for several reasons. First, you might accidentally say something inconsistent. Maybe you mention being somewhere that raises follow-up questions. Maybe you give a detail that does not match something on your documents. Even small inconsistencies can be noted and used later. Second, casual questions can drift into immigration-related territory very quickly. A question like where are you from originally or how long have you been in the country might seem harmless, but your answers could lead the officer to ask about your immigration status. And depending on what state you are in and what local policies exist, that information could be shared with federal immigration authorities. Third, anything you say during the stop can potentially be used in future proceedings, not just traffic court, but immigration proceedings as well. If your case ever comes before an immigration judge, the record of what happened during a traffic stop could be referenced. So what do you do when those casual questions start coming? You respond with one simple, calm, respectful sentence. Officer, I am happy to provide my documents, but I am going to respectfully decline to answer additional questions. You say it once, clearly, without attitude, without defensiveness, without over-explaining. Just a calm, clear boundary. This response is grounded in your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And here is something that many immigrants do not know. This right applies to everyone physically present in the United States, regardless of immigration status. It does not matter if you are a U.S. citizen, a green card holder, a visa holder, or undocumented. The Fifth Amendment protects you. Courts have consistently upheld that this right exists during traffic stops, not just after an arrest. You do not have to wait until things get serious to exercise this protection. You can use it from the very beginning of the interaction. When you exercise this right calmly and respectfully, something important happens. The stop stays focused on its original purpose. Your words cannot be used to expand the situation, and you have not given the officer any additional information that could lead to questions about your immigration status. Now we are getting to the most critical moment of the entire traffic stop. This is the point where more immigrants unknowingly give up their rights than at any other stage. And it happens right when it feels like everything is about to end. Here is how it typically plays out. The officer takes your documents, walks back to their patrol car, runs your information, and then returns to your window a few minutes later. In your mind, you are already thinking the stop is over. You are expecting your documents back, maybe a warning or a ticket, and then you will be on your way. But then the officer hands back your documents and asks something that sounds like a closing question. It feels casual. It feels like part of wrapping things up. So, you do not have anything in the car I should know about, right? No contraband or anything like that in the vehicle. It sounds like a formality, but it is not. That question is the doorway into a vehicle search, and it is specifically designed to feel casual so that your guard is down at the exact moment it matters most. Here is where many immigrants make a decision that they cannot take back. Wanting to be cooperative, wanting to show they have nothing to hide, they respond quickly. No, nothing at all. You can check if you want. And right there, without realizing it, they have just given legal consent to search the vehicle. Once consent is given, everything changes. The officer no longer needs probable cause or a warrant. The search becomes lawful based entirely on your permission. And anything found during that search, regardless of how small or how unrelated to the original stop, can now be used. For an immigrant, this can be devastating. A search could reveal documents, medications, items belonging to other passengers, or any number of things that could lead to additional questions, charges, or complications that directly impact your immigration case. But here is the most important thing you need to understand. You are not required to say yes. You had every legal right to decline, but in the moment, it did not feel like a real choice. So what do you say instead? When that closing question comes, instead of answering it directly, you take control of the moment with one clear sentence. Thank you, officer. Am I free to go? That question is powerful because it forces clarity. It requires the officer to make a definitive decision. Either the stop is over and you leave, or the officer must articulate a legal reason to continue detaining you. If the officer says yes, you are free to go, the interaction is complete. You take your documents, you thank the officer, and you drive away. No search, no additional questions, no unnecessary risk to your immigration status. But if the officer says no, you are not free to go, now you know something important. You are being detained beyond the original purpose of the stop. And at that point, you respond with another clear statement. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. And then you stop talking. No explanations. No arguments. No additional commentary, just a clear, documented boundary. This approach is grounded in the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches, which applies to everyone in the United States regardless of immigration status. The Supreme Court has ruled that once the original purpose of a traffic stop is complete, the officer cannot extend the stop without an independent legal justification. Your question, "Am I free to go?" brings that legal principle to the surface immediately. For immigrants specifically, refusing consent to search is one of the most important protections you can exercise during a traffic stop. Because what might seem like a harmless search to a U.S. citizen can have devastating consequences for someone whose entire future in this country depends on maintaining a clean record and avoiding complications. Now let me address something that is specifically relevant to the immigrant community and that no general traffic stop advice ever covers. What happens when the officer asks about your immigration status during a traffic stop? In some states and some jurisdictions, officers may ask questions like, "Are you a U.S. citizen? What is your immigration status? Or do you have papers?" Here is what you need to know. In most situations, you are not required to answer questions about your immigration status during a routine traffic stop. A traffic stop is based on a traffic violation, and the scope of the stop is supposed to be limited to that violation. However, the law on this varies by state and by circumstance, which is why your response matters so much. If you are asked about your immigration status, the safest response is the same calm sentence we discussed earlier. "Officer, I am going to respectfully decline to answer additional questions." You do not have to disclose your immigration status during a traffic stop. You do not have to tell the officer what country you are from. You do not have to explain your visa type or show your immigration documents unless you are at a border checkpoint or port of entry, which is a completely different legal situation. Now, there are some important exceptions. If you are a lawful permanent resident, you are technically required to carry your green card with you at all times. If asked specifically for your green card by federal immigration authorities, not local police, failing to produce it could create complications. However, during a routine local traffic stop, your driver's license, registration, and insurance are all that is legally required. If you are on a non-immigrant visa, like an H-1B, F-1, or B-1/B2, you are not required to disclose your visa status to local police during a traffic stop. Your visa status is a federal immigration matter, and local traffic enforcement does not have jurisdiction over it in most states. The key principle is this: keep the stop focused on the traffic matter. Provide your driving documents. Decline additional questions respectfully, and do not volunteer any information about your immigration status, your country of origin, or your background unless you are required to do so by law in your specific jurisdiction. If you are unsure about the specific laws in your state, consult with an immigration attorney before you are ever in this situation. Knowing your rights in advance is infinitely more valuable than trying to figure them out while an officer is standing at your window. Alright, now let me cover something that almost nobody does after a traffic stop, but that immigration attorneys consider one of the most valuable things you can do. And that is documentation. Once the stop is over and you drive away, most people treat it like it is finished. The stress fades, the moment passes, and they move on. But from a legal standpoint, that is actually when one of your strongest protections begins. Here is why this matters so much for immigrants specifically. If that traffic stop results in any kind of charge, any kind of report, or any kind of record, it could come up later during your immigration case. It could appear during your green card renewal. It could surface during your naturalization interview. It could be referenced during your asylum hearing. And when it does, the official version of events will be the officer's report, written from their perspective, using their observations and their interpretation of what happened. If you do not have your own record, you have nothing to counter that narrative with. Your memory will be fuzzy, the details will be unclear, and you will be relying entirely on someone else's version of your own experience. So here's what you do. As soon as the stop ends and you are somewhere safe, you create your own record. The easiest way is with your phone. Open the voice memo app and start recording immediately. Begin with a simple line. "This is a record of a traffic stop that occurred on today's date." Then walk through everything you remember while it is still fresh. What time was it? Where exactly were you? Why were you pulled over? What did the officer say when they approached? What did you say? Did the officer ask to search your vehicle? Did you consent or decline? Did the officer touch your vehicle, and where? Were there multiple officers? Did anyone ask about your immigration status? What was the officer's badge number or patrol car number if you noticed? How long did the stop last? Were there any witnesses? You are not trying to sound perfect or polished. You are trying to be accurate and immediate. Every detail you capture in those first few minutes after the stop is worth more than anything you try to recall weeks later. Legal professionals call this contemporaneous documentation, meaning a record made at or near the time of the event. Courts give significantly more weight to contemporaneous records than to later recollections. And immigration attorneys have used these kinds of records to challenge reports, highlight inconsistencies, and protect their clients' cases. This takes 5 minutes, maybe less, but it could be the difference between having evidence to support your side of the story and having nothing at all. Now let me put everything together by showing you how the exact same traffic stop can go in two completely different directions depending on the small decisions you make. Imagine you are driving home at night. You see flashing lights behind you. You pull over. In the first scenario, the driver reacts on instinct. The car stops and immediately they start reaching across the seat, opening the glove box, searching for papers. The officer approaches, taps the tail light, and sees movement inside the vehicle. The driver startles, turns around quickly. The officer reaches the window with a heightened level of caution. The driver starts talking immediately, explaining where they are coming from, volunteering details, trying to seem cooperative. When asked about the car, they say, "You can look if you want." A search begins. Documents are examined more closely. Questions come up about status. The stop stretches to 30 or 40 minutes. What started as a broken tail light becomes an event that shows up in the driver's immigration record for years. Now take the exact same situation, but the driver knows what you now know. The lights come on. They pull over calmly. Engine off. Interior light on. Hands on the wheel. The officer approaches, taps the tail light. Nothing changes inside the vehicle. No reaction. No movement. The officer gets to the window and the driver says calmly, "Good evening, officer. My hands are on the steering wheel." When asked for documents, the driver says, "My registration is in the glove box. May I reach for it?" Slow, clear, controlled. The officer takes the documents and returns a few minutes later. Casual questions start. The driver responds respectfully, "Officer, I am happy to provide my documents, but I am going to respectfully decline to answer additional questions." Then comes the transition. "Anything in the car I should know about?" The driver responds, "Thank you. Officer, am I free to go?" The officer pauses, then says yes. The driver receives their documents and drives away. Total time, maybe 10 minutes. No search, no escalation, no immigration complications. And 5 minutes later, the driver records a detailed voice memo documenting the entire stop. Same road, same time, same reason for being pulled over. But two completely different outcomes based entirely on awareness, composure, and understanding of rights. Let me summarize everything into 4 clear steps that you can use every single time. Step 1. The moment you are pulled over, hands on the wheel, engine off, interior light on. No reaching, no movement, no reaction to the tail light tap. Remove every trigger that could justify escalation. Step 2. When casual questions begin, remember your legal obligation is limited to providing your driving documents. Respectfully decline to answer additional questions. Do not volunteer information about where you are going, where you are from, or anything about your immigration status. Step 3. When the stop feels like it is wrapping up and you sense the transition toward a search request, take control with one question. Am I free to go? If the answer is yes, leave. If the answer is no, state clearly, I do not consent to any searches, and then remain silent. Step 4. After the stop, immediately create a detailed voice memo documenting everything that happened. Time, location, what was said, what was asked, and how you responded. This record can protect your immigration case if the stop is ever referenced in future proceedings. These 4 steps are simple. They are legal. They are grounded in constitutional protections that apply to every person in the United States regardless of immigration status. And when used together, they form a complete system that keeps traffic stops routine, focused, and short. If you are an immigrant living in the United States, whether you are a green card holder, a visa holder, an asylum seeker, or you have any pending immigration case, understanding how to handle a traffic stop is not optional. It is essential. A single traffic stop handled poorly can create complications that follow you through your immigration journey for years. But a traffic stop handled with awareness and composure can end in minutes without any impact on your status whatsoever. Here is what I need you to do right now. First, hit the like button if this video gave you information you did not have before. That one click helps this video reach more people in the immigrant community who desperately need this knowledge. Second, subscribe to US visa and green card info and turn on notifications. We cover critical immigration updates, visa bulletin breakdowns, green card processing news, and know your rights content every single week. Missing one video could mean missing the update that directly affects your case. Third, share this video right now with every immigrant you know who drives in this country. Your family members, your coworkers, your friends, everyone. They need this information before their next time behind the wheel, not after something goes wrong. Drop a comment below telling me which of the 4 steps surprised you the most. And let me know, before watching this video, did you know that a simple traffic stop could have immigration consequences? I read every single comment, and your questions help me create the content this community needs most. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay prepared, know your rights, and I will see you in the next video right here on US visa and green card info.